GP Atlanta. Hello and welcome to this round 14 here at Grand Prix Atlanta. And we've got two big names from seasons past, if you will, at this GP. Carlos Romão, former world champion from Brazil, up against Chris Picula. Picula looking to get back onto the Pro Tour and facing down already.
And Picula also re-qualified for the Hall of Fame ballot recently, or perhaps with this tournament, getting some pro points. That's something that he had been striving for a long time. So, well done to him.
Fretwork Colony here up against an eager construct from Chris Picula. Green-black versus red-black as far as we can see from here. Both players getting their scry off that construct. And we'll see Carlos Romão's life total diminishing each and every turn thanks to the Fretwork Colony that he has in play. Each and every upkeep of his, he's going to lose a life, but that colony is going to gain a +1/+1 counter.
The question is, will he attack into the eager construct? And when you have a blocker for it, you don't really have to attack yet. Sometimes it's tough to keep the Fretwork Colony around for too long because, yeah, every turn you do lose a life to it. But now it's at least a 3-3, meaning that it will be more difficult for Chris Picula to line up good blocks against it. I'm sure Carlos will be happy to trade it for a Renegade Freighter, so attacking with it on this turn seems reasonable.
Yeah, the nightmare when you're playing with the colony is the opponent playing something like a malfunction or a revoke privileges on it, so it sits there just damaging you each turn. Against red-black, you're not quite as worried. It's going to be able to be a bit more potent.
I wonder if we're going to see the Chief of the Foundry get in there as well. If Carlos has nothing, then it could easily get blocked by Renegade Freighter. But if Carlos has, say, a Subtle Strike or an Ornamental Guidance, or even bluffs it, then this may turn out well for him. On the other hand, if he is planning to, say, play another creature and then maybe double block the Renegade Freighter, then obviously you don't want to attack there. Or just crew up your own Renegade Freighter. That'll work.
Yeah, it's funny. The Renegade Freighters, if they get tussle in combat with Chris Picula attacking, they'll be the same size. One of them will get +1/+1 because it's attacked. The other one has +1/+1 because of Chief of the Foundry. And there's a crew. There is an attack. And it looks like Carlos Romão fancying his chances in a damage race here.
No, he's just taking it aggressive.
No follow-up play, though, from Chris Picula. Not even a land.
Well, Carlos may recognize that if he had blocked with the Renegade Freighter, then he does take some trample damage in the process. But the fact that he goes for the no blocks definitely indicates that he's confident that he can win this damage race.
Well, damage races get destroyed by unlicensed disintegration. That is an artifact in play for Chris Picula, so that creature will get destroyed, we believe. Oh, wait.
Oh, wow. Rush of Vitality. That is an amazing blowout. Not only will it give +1/+0 and lifelink, but more importantly, indestructible. So it will survive the unlicensed disintegration. Still lose 3 life to it. That still happens. But the Renegade Freighter is still alive, on and trucking, and a huge life-linking swing with that Rush of Vitality.
Yeah, the 3 points of damage from unlicensed disintegration dwarfed by the amount of extra life gained by Carlos Romão on that attack. And Chris Picula now, single-digit life totals, is going to need to find something big. And given he missed a land drop last turn, he's kind of in hot water here.
Yeah, he has a lot of 4-drop creatures in hand, but unable to cast those. Metal Spinner's Puzzle Knot.
Spins the wheel, loses a life, draws a card, but does not find a land. This is not what Chris Picula was looking for here one bit. Both these players at 11 and 2, so very much in the fight to make it into the top 8. But this round, hugely important to each of them.
Yeah, and Picula is in danger of dying on the next attack. Renegade Freighter could get crewed by the Chief of the Foundry. Then Romão attacks with both of his creatures. One is a 5/5 Fretwork Colony. The other one, well, also pretty powerful and with Trample. And Yeah, Crispicula can only present one blocker. Vehicles in general are much better on the attack than when you're defending, because, well, they just don't contribute another blocker to the board.
Double Chief of the Foundry, so this is a big train, and that's enough for Crispicula. He says, all right, I'm not going to win this one. Let's try game 2.
Yep. Well, that was quick.
Yeah, I mean, red-black is certainly an archetype that can be fast. In this instance, though, it was black-green that was able to get things done for Carlos Romao. We'll see how those things shape up in subsequent games. In the meantime, though, we're going to get a chance to see Matthias Hunt against Chris Fennell. Both of these players also on 11 and 2. We're hitting that point in the day where it's all big names and it's all big stakes as these players try and just find the final wins that they need to lock up a top 8 spot.
Yeah, even though we saw Matthias Hunt draft just a couple minutes ago, that was a recorded one from the beginning of the day. Right now he's on
Mono red?
It looks like mono red. I don't see any other basic lands other than mountains. Can't really get a peek at his hand.
I mean, a grizzly spectacle on one of his creatures suggests to me that he's gone deep on one color rather than branching out into a second. Thriving Grubs here coming down, up to 4 energy now, and with that Spontaneous Artist in play, he could immediately attack with the Grubs if he so chooses.
Yeah, I haven't seen many monocolor decks in this format. There's not really any payoff for staying monocolor, apart from a better mana base. But sometimes a color is so incredibly open that you see no reason to move into anything else. So indeed, Matthias uses all the energy that he can. Haste the Thriving Grubs, and now Chris Fennell has to find reasonable blocks. He has 4 power worth of creatures that he can put down. There's a Spireset Infiltrator, which is currently 5/3 with Menace. Could be double blocked by, say, the Aviary Mechanic and a Servo Token. But then Chris Fennell would take 6 damage from the other creatures. He could also, say, single block the Thriving Grubs with Aviary Mechanic. That also works. One way or another, he's almost certainly going to make some blocks. And since the Menace creature is the most threatening one, it also pings a point when it gets tapped. Seems like the best creature on the board so far, so it makes sense to try to trade for that. And that's indeed what Chris Fennell is trying to do with this block here.
It looks like it all works out. No tricks there from Matthias Hunt. I mean, even something as simple as a Chandra's Pyrohelix could have been a big deal on that board. Propeller Pioneer, the pickup there for Chris Fennell. It looks like a Fairgrounds Warden also available to him.
Wait, maybe the life totals were swapped before we joined in. If Matthias is indeed at only 6 life, that doesn't bode well for him. Nope. The good old switcheroo. So Chris Fennell is indeed at 6 life, Matthias at 15. And this means that Fennell has to play defense now. He cannot really attack with the ambitious Eaterborn. That would be kind of an ambitious attack when Matthias is still at 15 life. He probably just needs the 5/4 to block both of Matthias's 3 power creatures.
Well, if figuring out where he wants to be.
If Matthias has nothing of relevance in hand, he has no good attacks. If he attacks with both of his creatures, then the Thriving Grubs will get blocked by the Visionary Augmenter, the Spontaneous Artist will get blocked by the 5/4 ambitious Etherborn, so that doesn't really work.
Okay, but by the sounds of it, our first match is ready to jump back, so we're going to get a chance to see a little bit more of our main match, Carlos Romao against Chris Picula. And given how fast game 1 was, we don't want to miss too much here. Thriving Grubs already having got a hit in here for Chris Picula. They already got that +1/+1 counter on it.
And no 3-drop for Carlos Romao.
Yeah, his one Servant of the Conduit got hit by a Die Young, and that, of course, meaning that the board nice and clear for Chris Picula. He's got a Prakata Pillar Bug. He's got the black mana available to give it lifelink, and a little bit better of a draw here for Chris Picula than we saw in game 1.
Molfish Squad, along with a Servo Token, means that Carlos Romao has, well, a reasonable blocker for both of Chris Picula's creatures, as well as a Servo Token that can, say, jump block later on. maybe hop into a vehicle. We'll see.
Those vehicles, you just can't leave them parked anywhere. Something always seems to jump into them. And unlicensed disintegration pays off this time. Crispicula uses it when Carlos Romao tapped out. And this time round, he's able to get a big swing in without too much worry.
Yep, Romao down to 6 life already. This red-black deck of Crispicula, when he does draw his mana, is not really giving the world champion from 2002 from Brazil a lot of time. Skyskiff. See that Servo was gonna jump into a vehicle. It'll pilot a skyboat. But let's see. The Skyskiff could trade for Thriving Grubs. No reason for Crispicula not to attack with both of his creatures here. And drawing 2 cards with Live Fast. It makes sense to do that before combat, just in case you draw another removal spell or maybe a build to smash, something that you want to play during combat. Also, of course, yeah, it gives you 2 energy, so you can make the grubs even bigger. That's quite relevant.
And post-combat, no need for lifelink, needed that mana for something else, that being Renegade Freighter. Choo-choo, we are in action with vehicles on both sides of the battlefield at this point.
Well, what can Carlos do here? Nothing, just passing the turn. Well, he'll have to find an answer for well, at least 2 attacking creatures, one of which might have trample. Alright, the giant jumps into the train, so now there's 3 potentially lethal attackers.
And that's enough for Carlos Romao to scoop up his cards. We are on to game 3 for that one, and given how quick it was, I'm guessing that we can jump back and see a little bit more of some other matches that have been going on. Fast magic in our feature match area. These players hungry to get there, and in fact we have heard that the players are shuffling in our other matches, all of the games ending in synchronized fashion. So let's have a little look in terms of sideboarding between these various different decks. Carlos Romao's deck here, I have a couple of copies of Chief of the Set Foundry that we saw in game 1, 2 Skyskiffs in total, but then largely his deck is doing good things with green. He's got 3 copies of Pima Outrider, 2 copies of Thriving Rhino, and then that Servant of the Continent, Sage of Shalia's Claim. He's got a great opportunity to just curve out pretty much in green, and then in terms of black, 1 tidy conclusion, some combat tricks with Rush of Vitality and Subtle Strike, and then some Morphous squads. Not lots of sideboarding options there for him, though. Looks like he moved around a little bit in terms of colors while drafting.
Crispicula's deck, in the meantime, seems to have a lot of reach, actually. He has 2 copies of Unlicensed Disintegration. We already saw it do a lot of work. He has 2 copies of them, so definitely a good reason to be in black-red. Not a whole lot of artifacts in his deck. There are a couple, like Percata Pillarbug and Renegade Freighter, as well as the Metal Spinners puzzle knot that we saw, plus some Molfis squad with Fabricate. But I mean, even if you don't have an artifact to turn on the 3 damage Unlicensed Disintegration, it's just a murder. It's an excellent card. But he has that as well as Furious Reprisal and Chandra's Pyrohelix. So if he can get Carlos Romao to a relatively low life total, he has a lot of ways to deal the last points of damage. Looking at his creature base, well, some artifact creatures like Eager Construct, the Prakata Pillarbug, that'll work. Some 2-drops in Thriving Grubs, high drops in Wayward Giant. He has pretty much cards all along the curve, so it looks like a focused, solid, aggressive red-black deck with a relatively low curve, stopping at 5 with the Wayward Giants and lots of reach.
Well, a 2-drop on turn 2 for Carlos Romao, and Servant of the Conduit, one of the better ones, means that potentially he can jump up to 4 mana on his 3rd turn at the cost of an energy. Crispicula with that Metal Spinners puzzle knot. Costs him a life, but he gets to draw a card.
And there is a 4-drop on turn 3, and it's one of the better ones. Pima Outrider. Carlos goes for a 3/3 and a 1/1 rather than just a 4/4 Trampler. Given that he's already seen stuff like Unlicensed Disintegration, good removal spells, it makes sense to basically spread out. Also, there's a Chief of the Foundry boosting the Servo token, so it effectively grants him another point of power. This is a very strong and quick start by Carlos Romao here. Well, Crispicula is a bit struggling. Hasn't had the opportunity to put down a blocker yet. Now he does. He can block at least, well, at most one creature, either with the Molfis Doorbuster or with Renegade Freighter. Freighter seeming to be the more likely blocker here. But Piccolo's already down to 12 life. Let's see what Carlos has to follow up the start.
Looks like he might have a Molfis squad in hand, and that, of course, with Chief of the Foundry in play, will effectively make a 3-1 and a 2-2. Even more attackers for an already a potent attacking force.
Sure, but if Carlos just has a bunch of creatures and no removal spells or tricks, he doesn't have great attacks here. The Chief of the Foundry, the Servo Token, and the Servant of the Conduit would just get blocked by the Renegade Freighter. The Pima Outrider can trade for the Freighter. That said, I mean, even if you... yeah, this is actually fine. You lose a Chief of the Foundry, but you get to deal 7 damage in the process. With Piccolo already down to a low life total, that's actually a fine exchange. You lose a card in the process, but 7 damage, that's worth it.
Wayward Giant represents a relatively nice roadblock here. 4/5 body is going to be big enough to block just about everything, but everything is a lot of creatures in this case.
Yep. He didn't even think for a second. Just, yep, I'm attacking. Alright, so what can Chris do here? Perhaps he can make 2 blockers. So he can block Pima Outrider. He cannot block Molfis Squad because it has Menace. So at best he can block Servant of the Conduit. I think that's what they are also figuring out, which means that the Molfis Squad and the 2 Servo tokens would be unblocked. Yeah, there are just no blocks that Chris Piccolo can do to survive this turn. He always takes 5, and they'll do it.
Blisteringly fast 3-game match. For those of you wondering, there's still half an hour left on the main game clock. I would say that it probably works out a little bit more than half an hour for our feature match area. We typically start things just a tiny bit later as we're getting people set up. And yeah, Chris Piccolo has got plenty of time to go and think about how he's going to rally back in the final round here. And we get to jump across and see more of Matthias Hunt's mono red deck against Chris Fennell. Game 1 didn't quite work out for Matthias Hunt. Chris Fennell here, though, is mono white as well.
Well, but he had another color. We saw that in the previous game. Hijack. Well, hello. Prakata Pillarbark being stolen. This means that Chris Fennell now doesn't have amazing blocks. He can still double block the Spireside Infiltrator. That's fine. Not the best hijack ever. I have to say, typically you want to play it when if it wins you the game. A bit later in the game when you've already committed all of your creatures to the table. It allowed Matthias to deal some damage, but Chris Fennell is still at a relatively high life total. If he ever finds a swamp, then the lifelink from Prakata Pillarbark could also become relevant. The fact that Matthias had to play hijack there would indicate to me, if I were in Chris Fennell's seat, that Matthias' hand is not very good at this point. Maybe lots of 4+ casting cost cards, maybe some direct damage, but it was not that impressive.
I mean, Consulate Skygate from Chris Fennell, it's a fine blocker, but it's not doing a huge amount more for now.
Yeah, it blocks the Driving Grubs. That's alright. And Chris Fennell did feel a need to play a bit more defensively, keeping back his Prakata Pillarbark. Perhaps afraid of something like a Spontaneous Artist. Red of Chris would have attacked with the Pillarbark, and then Matthias plays a haste creature. Fennell, who's already at 7 life, would fall behind too much. There's a Deadlock Trap.
Yeah, Deadlock Trap, it will buy some time for Matthias Hunt. If he's got more ways of generating energy, it can potentially keep a lot of things tapped down. It can also potentially just say, Thriving Grubs is now a 4/3. And 4/3 is a much more exciting size, but Fairgrounds Warden says no to that one, and now the attacks start to come from Chris Fennell.
And now it's pretty safe. Even if Matthias has a haste creature, he will have to tap down the Consulate Skygate in order to get in with a profitable attack. And the amount of energy that can be put into the Deadlock Trap is limited.
Another copy of Hijack in hand for Matthias Hunt here. His deck seems like quite an unusual one.
Yeah, mono red aggro. Well, there is this. I think there's a Spontaneous Artist in his hand. He could play here, though it could also be a Skyship Stalker.
Skyship Stalker is definitely an interesting one if you're a mono red deck, and actually a pretty good incentive to be mono
right.
red.
That's a good point. Yeah, it is actually the Skyship Stalker. One of the better rares in the format. Even if you would never put any other mana into it, it's a 3/3 flyer for 4 mana, which is an excellent deal. But it has so many abilities. One is, well, for a red mana you can give it haste, not going to be relevant afterwards. Another is that you can give it first strike for 1 red mana, and it has fire breathing, which means that for 1 red mana you can pump it +1/+0 until end of turn. You can do that as often as you like, so this could represent a lethal threat actually, because Matthias can pump it up to a 7/3 flyer if he commits all the mana on the next turn, and Fennel is at 7. Still without a swamp or some other mana. He does have Consulate Skygate, which has reach, so Fennel can at least block there.
Unless, of course, it gets tapped down. The Deadlock Trap may be the additional piece of the puzzle that Matthias Hunt needs here in order to finally just swing in for all the points. I mean, he's very much putting all his eggs in one basket here if he does this.
Yeah, he would have to be scared of, say, impeccable timing. Right? The white instant that deals 3 damage to an attacking or blocking creature. But, well, what are you going to do, really?
Well, it looks like Matthias has found a way of diversifying his threats a little bit. Paying 4 mana for a 3/3 creature that he can give haste. He still can present lethal here, but can do it with 2 separate creatures, which means that the opportunity for things to go wrong is smaller. As it turns out, I think either way around it probably would have worked.
Yep.
So
yeah,
Matthias
Fennel
Hunt
did not have an answer.
forcing a game 3. Fennel with a pretty weak-looking draw there. Not ever finding his second color of mana was a big issue, and we now know why it is that Matthias Hunt is, as far as we can tell, a mono-red deck.
Well, let's take a look at his list, actually. We found it here.
Yep, mono-red.
Yep, 17 mountains. That's it. And there are some questionable cards in there, but he does have 2 copies of Skyship Stalker, so that's an excellent reason to stay mono-red. Meanwhile, we get a quick peek at this match between Tien Nguyen and Louis Salvato. Well, lots of Gear Seeker Serpents on Salvato's side of the board.
He won't be able to make them all unblockable, but even one unblockable one takes Tien Nguyen down to a very low life total indeed. Though it's looking pretty close in terms of who can actually swing through for damage here, because we've got flyers and menace creatures on one side of the battlefield and ground pounders the other.
Yeah, Louis can't actually attack with a Gear Seeker Serpent, because then he would have to double block the Wayward Giant with menace, and then he loses to all the other attackers. So he had to play defense, but that's not very profitable against a Skysword Harrier that he doesn't have an answer to.
This another game 3 and another match where each of these players are on 11-2. So the wins more valuable than ever at this stage in the day as we get closer and closer to top 8. Just one more round after this one in which people can lock up their spots.
Yeah, and I don't see a good way out for Louis here. Sure, he can make one Gear Seeker Serpent unblockable, but all the other ones will be blocked. And he doesn't seem to have an answer to the Skysword Harrier. With flying, threatens to soar in for the kill.
And there's the handshake, shows just an Inventor's Goggles and a land in hand. Propeller Pioneer was the top card of the deck. That's why you never look, Louis. And then there was an Ether Storm Rock in there as well. So there's definitely some power in that blue-white deck on Salvato's side of the table, but not able to draw everything he needed in order to make it happen. But congratulations to Tien Nguyen there. A big win for him. And it looks like Matthias Hunt and Chris Fennel just shuffling up, drawing their opening hands here. So we'll be able to get just a little bit more magic from our feature match area here in this round 14.
Yeah, taking a look further at Matthias Hunt's mono-red masterpiece, it includes 3 Giant Spectacle, 3, or at least he drafted 3 of them, and he played 3 of them. He also drafted 3 Hijack, playing 2 of them. So a couple of crazy cards in there, but there's also 4 Thriving Grubs, 4 Spirocide Infiltrator, so the early part of his curve is pretty good, and he does indeed start off with a Thriving Grubs there.
This time round, though, Chris Fennel, by turn 3, he's got both colors of mana, he's got creatures on the board. That Prakata Pillarbug will be able to gain lifelink soon enough. This is kind of where he wanted to be in every game where he's playing his deck.
Chris Van El get back the aviary mechanic in well, in the hope of blocking a thriving grubs when it grows to be a 3/2. Also, given that Chris Van El has already seen at least one hijack, as well as some cards like Giant Spectacle, he will definitely try to play more defensive, keep one blocker extra on the board than you might be used to.
Spy-side Infiltrator coming down from Hunt, who does not have an attack that turn, and he just has to look on as Propeller Pioneer comes down for Chris Van El alongside a Servo token. So Chris Van El able to go wide here, and I think that's probably going to be something that's going to work to his benefit against Matthias Hunt's deck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I'm in Chris Van El's seat here, I would be happy with at least the Propeller Pioneer as a flyer. I have some blockers that can help against well, the Giant Spectacle, Hijack, all that crazy red effects that I mentioned. Also, well, when there are attacks being made, it always favors the blocker. So, not getting in too aggressive for Van El. Meanwhile, Matthias Hunt, yeah, he also doesn't really have the option of getting in for a lot of damage. That Spire-Set Infiltrator would just trade with Aviary Mechanic, driving grubs for, say, a Pillar Bug. Especially when you have some hijacks in hand, you want to well, take it slowly, not trade off too early.
Skyswell Harrier the play for Van El. So his Air Force growing larger, and that's going to be a little bit of a concern for Matthias Hunt. He's not got many flyers himself with which to be able to deal with that, and he doesn't necessarily want his big dragons to be trading all that much.
Yeah, but there could be an excellent card coming down here. Ballista Charger, one of the better vehicles around. You can overcrew. It has crew 3, but you can tap more creatures in order to crew it. With the 2 Spire-Side Infiltrators, this will allow Matthias to just ping Chris Van El for 2 damage at the end of his turn. And then, when Matthias gets around to his own turn, he could animate the Ballista Charger again and then attack to, say, ping a point of damage to the Propeller Pioneer to reduce Chris Van El's Air Force by a little bit. And also, hey, a 6/6 attacker. Chris Van El may have some blockers, but still hard to line up enough good blockers for the Ballista Charger. I guess Dukhara Scavenger, that's a huge crocodile, 4/6. So a 4/6 and, say, a Percata Pillar Bug would form a good blocking team for the Ballista Charger, if that crocodile remains under Chris Van El's control this turn, that is.
Yeah, old Big Croc didn't actually return anything back to the top of Christopher Van El's deck on this particular occasion. Just simply being a gigantic monster is good enough in this case. So Matthias Hunt checking out his hand. He's got at least one hijack in hand here. And there's now a few targets that are kind of interesting in terms of using it.
Yeah, still, I mean, it might be enticing just play hijack on the Dukhara Scavenger, crew up the Ballista Charger, attack with everything, ping down the Propeller Pioneer, but he does have to be careful not to get too enthusiastic, because before you know it, Chris Van El just attacks you back for 13, right? Because let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, there would be 12 power remaining after the Propeller Pioneer dies, so unless Chris Van El has some kind of pump spell, Matthias Hunt is in no specific danger of dying immediately to the complete swing back, which would mean that if he so pleases, he could attack with all of his creatures. Giant Spectacle as well, making it more difficult to block, turning the Spire-Side Infiltrator into a 5/3.
Well, the Ballista Charger, unsurprisingly, chooses to send its point over at that Propeller Pioneer. It goes to the graveyard. And Van El here, he's going to be taking a relatively large chunk of damage.
Matthias did keep back the Thriving Grubs as kind of an insurance against, say, a Build to Last or some other combat trick that would allow Chris Van El to suddenly win on the swing back. Just remember, Chris Van El will get that Dukhara Scavenger, the 4/6, back at the end of the turn.
It may also be that he's saving up the energy that he could use from the Thriving Grubs to pump it to do things with perhaps Spontaneous Artist. Spontaneous Artist plus another creature could lead to some very large swings.
Yep. Meanwhile, there is a total of 15 power coming Chris Fennell's way. So if he wants to, he can say, well, okay, no blocks, I'll take it. But, well, that would put him down to 1 in danger of dying to, well, all those Spireside Infiltrators or the Ballista Charger on the next turn. So you can only really make that play if you are somehow confident that you can win on the next turn, say with a removal spell and a pump spell in hand. Otherwise, yeah, you pretty much just have to make some kind of blocks. Could go for a simple jump block, say a servo on the Ballista Charger. Could try to take down the 5/3 Spireside Infiltrator. Right, you have to double block it because it has Menace, Aviary Mechanic, and the servo could jump in front. You could also do that and jump block the Ballista Charger. It doesn't leave you with all that many creatures, but at least it protects your life total a little bit better.
And the big old crocodile will be coming back at the end of this turn, so it's not as if he will be left with literally 1 creature after throwing lots in the bin.
Yep, looks like he goes for just the double block on the Spireside Infiltrator and keep the Prakata Pillar Bug around. It can still chum block on the next turn, where Chris Fennell may also have some mana available to give it lifelink, which is consequential.
Fennell loves this sort of magic. Limited is very much the format that he feels most comfortable in, and a new limited format is kind of seen as a challenge to these top limited players, and not surprising at all to see him here this weekend to me, preparing for the Pro Tour in his own way, which is to say getting in a whole lot of games at the top level. Chief of the Foundry there, pumps up the Prakata Pillar Bug, so now it's representing a 6-point swing, 3 points of damage, 3 points of lifelink.
Reasonable, and Fennell has plenty of good blockers remaining. So Matthias could, for instance, turn on the Ballista Charger, but then Chris Fennell could easily double block the Ballista Charger with Durkhara Scavenger and, say, Chief of the Foundry, in which case, well, Matthias would trade his Ballista Charger for the Durkhara Scavenger, which is not all that great, and then Chris Fennell can take control of the board. It will also mean that Matthias Hunt loses the opportunity to use the Spireside Infiltrator, Ballista Charger, 1 extra damage, a turn combo.
Well, we have more Spireside Infiltrators.
All right, 2 damage, a turn combo. Well, this could turn into kind of a crazy race between 2 damage, a turn being pinged just from the crew ability after the Spireside Infiltrators get tapped. Chris Fennell can't really attack with any of his ground creatures. They would just get blocked by the Ballista Charger. It's too big. He could attack with Skyswell Harrier. He'll need a total of 4 attacks to get there. But 4 attacks with Skyswell Harrier will do the trick to deal 10 damage. But it may not be fast enough before Matthias can win with just pings with the Infiltrators, and then finally an attack and a ping by the Ballista Charger.
There is a tidy conclusion in hand for Chris Fennell, and that changes the face of these things quite a lot. He's going to be able to remove a creature, gain a couple of life, and he'll have enough mana available to be able to give his Prakata Pillar Bug lifelink on top of that. So he has the potential to gain as much as 5 life this turn, kill a creature, and that's probably the reason that he's going for this more aggressive line.
Yeah, and if you're in Matthias' seat, you have to expect something, because that 4/6 is not going to attack into a 6/6 when Chris Fennell doesn't have anything along with it. That said, well, there's not much you can really do about it. Still have to force the play, and there it is. Tidy conclusion, saying no to the Ballista Charger. Matthias could recrew it with Spireside Infiltrator if he wants. One way or another, he will have to block at least 1 creature of Chris Fennell, because there's 10 power coming his way, given that the Pillar Bug is being pumped by the Chief of the Foundry.
Yeah, instant speed removal, a very, very powerful addition when you've got such tight races as this.
Yeah, and vehicles around. a sorcery speed removal wouldn't have done it here. So it looks like Matthias is trying to figure out, okay, should I recrew my Ballista Charger just for the extra damage with Spireside Infiltrator and then maybe jump block with Thriving Grubs? Or should I just try to get the Prakata Pillar Bug off the table by double blocking it? Right, it requires a double block at this point because it's a 3/4. It depends on what he has in hand, whether he can go for the playing grindy control game. I don't love that position against Chris Van El's board. Might be better to just hope you draw some haste creatures or a hijack or cobble something together. Alright, there's a jump block by the Grubs. Chris Van El gained some life with Tidy Conclusions, because he did have 2 artifacts, that is relevant. And now after this, Matthias Hunt will fall down to 4 life, in danger of dying on Chris Van El's next attack step. But can Matthias somehow get together a win? Maybe a hijack plus some pump spell that could do it, because the 2 Spireside Infiltrators represent 8 damage already. And if he can add some more damage, I think he has Iron League's Teeth in hand.
He does, yes. But the other card in there is not necessarily going to represent any more damage, so this is a tough one.
Yeah, and there's also a blocker in Chief of the Foundry on Chris Van El's side. Well, maybe Matthias just has to say, well, I lose in 2 attacks to the Skyswell Harrier. I have no answers to that, and relatively few in my deck unless I top deck a Skyship Stalker. Maybe I have to just play aggressively here and try to win in 2 attacks, maybe top decking something on the next turn. He could attack with both of his creatures, and then Chris Van El may easily block and trade with the Chief of the Foundry. Matthias did get 2 additional jump blockers, but he plays it slowly. Of course, if he had attacked with both of his Spireside Infiltrators and Chris had not blocked with Chief of the Foundry, he would have been dead, even with two blockers. Yeah, now Chris Van El also has to think of all the options here. If he attacks with everything, could he die to hijack in some way? Well, the Skyswell Harrier cannot be blocked, that's for sure. That will put Matthias Hunt down to 1 life. He definitely has to block all of the other creatures for that reason. Prakata Pillar Bug will put Chris Van El up to 15 life. It's going to be hard to finish him off from that position, so he just has to try to trade. Yep. Now, if Matthias Hunt would draw, say, Skyship Stalker on the next turn, he would get an answer to the Skyswell Harrier and might still come back. Don't operative, however, another attacker.
And there's the handshake. Christopher Van El up to 12-2 with 1 round to go. That's what he wanted in terms of keeping those dreams of top 8 alive. X2, kind of where you want to be.
Congratulations to Chris Van El. His deck seemed to perform well enough, and it was mainly Matthias trying to go super aggressive with his mono red deck, but he was unable to close out the game in the mid to late game.
But still, a very interesting match, and I've not seen a deck quite like Matthias Hunt's. It's definitely left me thinking a little bit more about some of the cards that are in red, the Giant Spectacles and so on. We've got more Magic coming for you soon enough. That was the end of this round, though. I'm going to pass things over to Maria and Marshall for a little bit more playback.